Fentanyl. Fentanyl is one of those drugs that wasn't meant to be dangerous. It was actually created by scientists as a medical painkiller, mainly used in hospitals for people going through extreme pain, like after major surgery or cancer treatment. So, on paper, it sounds helpful, and in controlled medical settings, it is. But outside of that, it becomes a completely different story. Fentanyl is insanely powerful. It's around 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. That means the amount needed to feel an effect is tiny. We're talking about something as small as a few grains of salt. And here's the problem. That same tiny amount can also stop your breathing. It works by binding to opioid receptors in your brain, basically telling your body, hey, everything's fine, relax. But it relaxes your breathing too much. So instead of just feeling calm, your body slowly forgets how to breathe. What makes it even worse is that a lot of people don't even know they're taking it. It's often mixed into other drugs like cocaine or heroin to make them stronger or cheaper. And that's why fentanyl is responsible for so many overdoses worldwide right now. Crocodile. Crocodile is probably one of the most disturbing drugs ever created, and the craziest part is, it wasn't made in labs, it was made in people's homes. It started in Russia when heroin became too expensive or hard to find. So people tried to create a cheaper alternative using codeine tablets and whatever chemicals they could get their hands on. And when I say whatever chemicals, I mean things like gasoline, paint thinner, iodine, basically stuff that should never be inside a human body. The result was crocodile. At first, it produces a short, intense high similar to heroin, but that high doesn't last long at all, so people keep using it again and again. And that's where things get really bad. Because unlike most drugs, this one doesn't just affect your brain, it destroys your body. The toxic chemicals in it start breaking down your skin and tissue from the inside. People develop severe infections, open wounds, and skin that literally starts to rot. That's actually where the name comes from. The skin turns scaly and greenish, almost like a crocodile. DMT. Back in 1931, a Canadian chemist named Richard Mansky first synthesized DMT in a lab. At the time, it wasn't even taken seriously. But decades later, scientists started finding it in nature. And not just in one plant, in a lot of them. It showed up in certain trees and plants used in traditional South American rituals. And that's where things started getting interesting. Indigenous cultures in the Amazon had already been using a brew called ayahuasca for centuries. They didn't call it DMT, obviously, but they knew it did something powerful. This drink is made by combining specific plants that, when brewed together, allow DMT to become active in the body. In modern times, DMT is usually extracted in labs or homemade setups using plant sources. It ends up as a crystalline substance that can be smoked or vaporized. And when people take it, it hits almost instantly. People describe being pulled out of their body, like they're no longer sitting where they were. The room disappears, the world disappears. Geometric patterns, shifting colors, the entire experience usually lasts around 5 to 15 minutes when smoked, but it doesn't feel like 5 to 15 minutes. It can feel much longer, like time just stopped working. Methamphetamine. Meth is one of those drugs that doesn't ease you into anything. It hits fast and it hits hard. It was originally developed for medical purposes and was even used during World War II to keep soldiers awake and alert for long periods, which sounds useful until you realize what it actually does to the brain. Meth floods your brain with dopamine, but not in a normal way. It's like turning the volume all the way up to max instantly. So people feel extremely energetic, focused, and confident, like they can do anything. And for a while, it works. People can stay awake for days. No sleep, no rest, just constant activity. But your brain is not designed for that. Eventually, sleep deprivation kicks in. Paranoia starts creeping in, hallucinations begin, people start seeing things that aren't there, hearing things that don't exist, and feeling like someone is watching them. And over time, meth doesn't just affect your mood, it actually changes your brain. It rewires how you feel pleasure, making normal life feel empty without it. So it's not just addictive, it replaces your ability to feel okay without it. Heroin. Heroin has a pretty ironic history. It was actually introduced as a safer alternative to morphine back in the day. Doctors thought it could help people without being as addictive. That didn't exactly go as planned. Heroin is made from morphine, which comes from the opium poppy plant. When it enters the body, it quickly converts back into morphine and binds to opioid receptors in the brain. That creates a powerful rush of euphoria. People describe it as an intense wave of relaxation and relief. But that feeling comes at a serious cost. It slows down your entire system. Breathing, heart rate, everything. And over time, your body becomes dependent on it just to feel normal. So it's not even about getting high anymore. It's about avoiding withdrawal. And withdrawal from heroin is brutal. People experience severe pain, anxiety, nausea, and an overwhelming urge to use again. That cycle makes it incredibly hard to quit. And like many opioids, the line between a normal dose and an overdose is dangerously thin. LSD. LSD was discovered in 1938 by a Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann. He was working in a lab trying to create new compounds that could be used in medicine, specifically from a fungus called ergot that grows on rye. He created LSD, tested it a little, didn't find anything useful, and just moved on. For 5 years, the compound sat there, completely ignored. Then in 1943, Hofmann decided to revisit it. While working with the chemical, he accidentally absorbed a tiny amount through his skin. He didn't even realize it at first. He became dizzy, restless. His perception started changing. So he went home early. He got on his bicycle, and while riding, reality started to completely distort. Colors became more intense. Objects started warping. Time felt strange. Now, chemically, LSD is made from compounds derived from that same ergot fungus. But the actual process is complex and usually done in labs. In its final form, LSD is extremely potent. We're talking micrograms. That's 1/1,000,000th of a gram, which means a tiny, almost invisible amount can completely change your perception. Unlike something like DMT, LSD doesn't hit instantly. After 30 to 60 minutes, colors look brighter, patterns start moving, and things around you can feel like they're breathing or shifting. Your thoughts become deeper, but also harder to control. Like your mind is going in 100 directions at once. Time feels completely off. Minutes can feel like hours. MDMA. MDMA is one of those drugs that people don't always put in the dangerous category, which is exactly what makes it interesting. It was originally developed in the early 1900s by a pharmaceutical company, but it didn't become popular until much later in party and club scenes. Unlike some of the other drugs on this list, MDMA is known for making people feel extremely happy, connected, and emotionally open. It increases serotonin, dopamine, and other chemicals in the brain, which creates that intense feeling of euphoria. People often describe it as feeling closer to others, more understanding, more in the moment. And that's exactly why it became so popular. But here's the catch. Your brain only has a limited amount of serotonin. So when MDMA releases a huge amount of it all at once, it basically drains your brain's supply. And after that comes the crash. People can feel extremely low, anxious, or even depressed for days after. It also affects body temperature and hydration, which can become dangerous in crowded or high-energy environments. And because it's often made illegally, you never really know what's actually in it. Cocaine. Cocaine is one of those drugs that people often underestimate because it's been around for so long. It comes from coca leaves and was actually used in medicine and even early products back in the day. Fun fact, early versions of Coca-Cola actually had small amounts of cocaine in it. It works by flooding your brain with dopamine, which is basically your brain's "this feels amazing" chemical. So when someone takes cocaine, they feel extremely confident, energetic, and honestly, kind of unstoppable. For a short time, everything feels better. You feel sharper, faster, more social. But that high doesn't last long at all. We're talking minutes. So what happens? People take more, and then more, and then more. And that's where things start going downhill. Because while your brain is chasing that same feeling, your body is getting pushed way beyond its limits. Your heart rate spikes, blood pressure goes up, and your heart is basically working overtime. And sometimes it just can't keep up. That's why cocaine is linked to heart attacks, even in people who seem completely healthy. And mentally, it's not much better. Over time, people can develop anxiety, paranoia, and even hallucinations. PCP. PCP was first developed in the 1950s by a pharmaceutical company called Parke-Davis. The goal was actually pretty normal. They were trying to create a powerful anesthetic, something that could be used during surgery to block pain. And at first it seemed promising, but there was a problem. Patients weren't just numb. They were completely disconnected from reality. Even after waking up, many of them were confused, agitated, and sometimes experiencing intense hallucinations. Some didn't recognize where they were or what was happening. So doctors quickly realized this is not something you want in a medical setting, and PCP was abandoned for human use. But that wasn't the end of it. Instead of disappearing, it found its way into illegal drug markets, where it got a completely different reputation. Now, chemically, PCP is a synthetic drug, meaning it's made in labs using various chemical processes. It's not something that comes from a plant like cocaine or heroin. Because of that, its form can vary. It's usually found as a white powder, but it can also be dissolved into liquid. Some people smoke it, often by spraying the liquid onto cigarettes or marijuana. Others ingest it or snort it. PCP works by blocking something in your brain called NMDA receptors, which are involved in perception, learning, and memory. Basically, it disrupts how your brain processes reality. People often describe feeling detached from their body, like they're observing themselves from the outside. Bath salts, synthetic cathinones. Bath salts is probably one of the most misleading names ever. It sounds like something you'd use to relax in a bathtub after a long day, but these bath salts have nothing to do with actual bathing products. They are a group of synthetic drugs called cathinones, which are chemically similar to a natural stimulant found in a plant called khat. That plant has been used for centuries in parts of Africa and the Middle East for its mild stimulant effects. In the early 20th century, chemists started experimenting with synthetic versions of cathinones, trying to create compounds that could be used in medicine or research. Over time, these chemicals were modified again and again in labs, creating stronger and more unpredictable versions. Eventually, some of these synthetic cathinones started appearing in the illegal drug market. They were often sold as bath salts, plant food, or research chemicals, not because that's what they actually were, but to avoid legal restrictions. As for how people take them, it depends. Some people snort the powder, others swallow it, smoke it, or even inject it. And once it enters the body, it starts affecting multiple systems in the brain at the same time. It increases levels of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, which are all involved in mood, energy, and alertness. Some people experience extreme anxiety or paranoia. Others report hallucinations or feeling disconnected from reality. What starts as curiosity can quickly turn into something far more dangerous. Would you try something like this if you knew the risks? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this interesting, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.